Last week I was riding my bicycle. I take a route down from my home south through downtown Salem and through the Riverfront Park and across the Peter Courtney Bridge, which we call the Taco Bridge because it looks like a taco. And then about 2 or 3 miles or 4 miles back, it goes to a parking lot, in Minto Brown parking lot. I'm coming up a little hill into the parking lot, and I'm listening to my iTunes on spin. It's my iPod. It's just, on shuffle. A couple of thousand songs on there. And I'm listening to a song called Everything You Did by Steely Dan. And there's a line in it that goes, I never knew you. You were a roller skater. And the instant that I heard the words roller skater, I came up over a rise, and there were 2 girls roller skating to me. And I thought, wow, that's a weird coincidence. But was it? I don't know. The very next day, I was listening to a new episode of Seth Godin's podcast, Akimbo, and it was all about coincidences. Are there coincidences? Are there no coincidences? He tells great stories, and it's a fun podcast. I just thought I would mention that because I was trying to figure out if that was a coincidence or was just a random thing that happened. I mean, so many things happen randomly to us every day that sometimes it's a coincidence and sometimes it's not, and maybe there is no such thing. I don't know. Welcome to the Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee podcast. It's July 9th, 2018. Thanks for joining me. I'm Tim Patterson. I'll have decaf because, if I drank the real stuff, real high caffeine, I'd probably never sleep and nobody would, be able to be around me. I'm owner of Trade Show Guy Exhibits in Salem, Oregon, blogger at TradeshowGuyBlog.com, author of 2 books, including Trade Show Success, 14 Proven Steps to Take Your Trade Show Marketing to the Next Level, and out only a couple of months ago, Trade Show Superheroes and Exhibiting Zombies, 66 lists making the most of your trade show marketing. Both of them fun, both of them useful, both of them available on Amazon.com. So, no coincidence. Today, I had a great interview that I'm going to share with you in just a moment with a very fun and informative person, Terry Brock, a man who's in the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame, which we'll talk about briefly. But let's start with who is Terry Brock and how did we run into each other? We've known each other for a long time, although he's in Florida and I'm in Oregon. So this is how that went. Welcome to Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee. My guest this morning is Terry Brock, all the way from Orlando, Florida?
Orlando, Florida.
We're like transnational today. I like this, Terry. It's good to see you. We met in person, I think, I'm going to say 10 or 11 years ago. You passed through Salem. You called me. We went and had lunch or something, and we crossed paths online now and then, but we've known each other for quite a while. How you doing today?
I am doing really well, and it is great to see you, Tim. Appreciate the work you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. And I thought it would be fun to talk because I think, in my earlier version of the podcast I did back in the day before, I think they actually called it podcasting. I may have interviewed you and we talked about some things, but let's catch up. What are you doing these days? Same old thing, or even if it's the same old thing, let's figure it out. What are you doing?
Doing all kinds of fun things. I'm a communicator. I speak and I write, doing a lot of work with cryptocurrencies right now and doing some things with that, but also doing a lot of marketing consulting. That's my MBA's in marketing. So we do that. And I'm a speaker, been doing it now. I figured, Tim, as I told you before we guys were recording, I'm just getting started. I've been doing it for 35 years. So I'm just getting started now.
You're just getting to the point where you're almost comfortable in front of a camera, in front of a crowd, right?
I'm working on getting rid of my shyness, as I've told you before.
So what do you do when you're on stage and you freeze up? Are you at the point where you can say, I just had a senior moment? I'm at that stage.
Well, I find what I want to do is I try to take that. There's a lot of times people say they get really nervous when they're talking, and that's understandable. I mean, you're looking at a bazillion people out there, and they're staring at you, and you're thinking, oh, gee, am I saying that right? Am I dressed properly? Is my hair combed properly? I want you to know I comb my hair particularly well for you today, Tim.
Okay, nice.
But I think as a speaker, what you can do is when you start focusing on the audience instead of you, and stop thinking, gee, am I okay? Did I say that right? But you think about what are their needs? What can I do to help them? We always do a whole lot better.
And I think also, I've done a lot of public speaking. I don't do it regularly, but I've done enough to where I'm comfortable. Of course, being in radio for 25 years, that's the speaking part. And when I first got into public speaking, people would say, well, you can speak into a mic. Can't you get up in front of people? And I would tell them that's a completely different thing. You're in a room with a microphone. That's easy. Getting up in front of 100 or 500 or 1,000 people, whatever, that's a different experience. And so it does take practice. It takes rehearsal. It takes preparation. So what do you tell people that want to do this? What kind of things do you tell them to focus on?
I think what you want to do is you want to focus on the message that you're going to give to an audience, helping them to find a solution. Now, you will need to present it, and you have to have two areas. One is you need to know your stuff. You got to really get good content. And as you get better at your content, then you feel more competent. And that builds your self-esteem. You feel better about it. And so I think you want to make sure you do that, but then also present it in the right way. A buddy of mine, Mark Sanborn, used to say it really well. He'd say, we as speakers, he was a professional speaker also, say it's kind of like we're bringing cherry cough syrup to people. Now, they've got a cough. They need to get that solved. They wouldn't have the cherry cough syrup just for a drink, for the fun of it. You don't do that. But you take it because you're sick, you got a cough, and you want to get rid of it. But it's cherry flavored, so it goes down better.
There you go.
So what we need to do is we present the content. But if I stood here and talked like this for a couple of hours, and I was just talking this way all the time, you wouldn't hang around very long.
No.
And even in an audience, people will check out mentally. So you want to use the right ways of connecting with people. Humor is a tool that's good, but I would not just say, I got to get a joke. A priest, a minister, and a rabbi walked into a bar. We don't want that stuff. We want something that's relevant. We want it to be in tune with us. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools that you can use to build your career and build your business. And that's connecting with people through the spoken word.
I would agree, and humor is an interesting thing. You mentioned that. I always think that if you are able to make fun of yourself on stage, that goes a long way to drawing a connection, making that emotional connection, because people can sympathize with you, empathize, and they understand because they've been there in a sense. They've needed to make fun of themselves, and if you can't make fun of yourself, that's a difficult thing to do. So.
Exactly. And you make fun of yourself, or you're telling a story that happened to you from their point of view. For instance, a lot of times people will say, something happened to me the other day. Maybe you can relate to this. And now people are going, oh, I can relate to this. We're in this together. Yeah. And I was walking along, and then when I saw this, you know what it's like when you see, yeah, okay, well, that's what happened to me. And so now it's like we're together on this. I'm just 2 steps ahead of you, holding your hand and kind of being a guide through solving this problem or seeing this adventure unfold.
A lot of us don't consider ourselves experts, even though we may know a lot about the area that we spend our day in. But really, being an expert means you only know a couple of things more than the people you're speaking to, and there are probably people in the audience that actually know more than you, but they're willing to hear what you are going to say because you're willing to get up there and say it. So being an expert, a lot of people say, I can't be an expert. I don't know that much. I don't know everything. And so they kind of backstep and don't do that. The other thing that you mentioned I think was interesting is stories. We all have stories. We've all heard stories that other people have told and shared, but I think the most valuable thing, I'm sure you would agree, is stories that you've experienced, personal stories. And I remember when I was in Toastmasters, one of the guys told me was, if you can come up with 50 stories, you can use those for the rest of your life, and you can always add new ones. So I think that's a great way to start. If you have stories, and they can be just like 30 seconds to a minute long, but they help illustrate a point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all something that can happen to you. And I think what you need to do is you need to keep a journal. There's a thing, I don't know if you remember this. There was a thing called paper and a pen. Remember that? I still use
wait a minute. Hang on. Oh, I've got one too.
There we go. Yes, they work. And by the way, I still love using my Note 8 and dictating into it. So we're using the whole range there. But what I would say is, many times people will say, well, nothing ever happens to me. I can't think of anything. I would say, well, just pause for a moment. And I want you to start thinking about what happens. And you start writing it down. Yeah. You write it down, or you dictate it, talk it into your device of choice. And then you can go back and you can amplify. You can modify what you're saying to say, oh, let me really emphasize, it was Bob there. Now, let me tell you what Bob looked like. He was about 6 foot tall, muscles really strong, and the guy was a kind you wouldn't want to mess with. And by the way, in the description I just gave, most everyone listening could have a picture of this mythical Bob that I just described. But by doing that and helping the audience to see it, you can take them to a place where they would see, and you can make fun, you can have fun. I mean, you've got to be alert. Be aware of what's going on. I remember a while back I was in Russia, and I was in St. Petersburg, there on Nevsky Prospect. It's the main historical street there in Russia. And I'm wandering up and down, just amazed at it. And I saw this restaurant, and it hit me. It was a sign that I thought was so profound. It said, vodka, it's not just for breakfast anymore. That's great. And so
that's a great story.
I use that. And when I said, because when I'll go out, I'll be talking about, say, cryptocurrency. Well, there's Bitcoin, and that it's not just for geeks anymore. And so I make a transition over there, use the vodka, a funny little thing, coming from Russia and all that. And it's not a big, long story, not a roll in the aisles, slapping your side funny, but it's just a nice little chuckle. But then use that to say, and it's not just this way anymore. And so find ways that you can make a transition using those stories.
And it doesn't have to be the best story, the longer story. Just a short little anecdote can illustrate a point. And I found that a lot of stories that I've told over the years can illustrate different things when you emphasize different parts of the story. You can tell a story about something you did in high school, and you can use that to show this, or you can show this. It comes up in different ways. And I think that if you're willing to be flexible in those types of things, you can use stories for a lot of different things.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, for those that are listening to this and watching what we're doing, and you think, well, I can't think of anything for me. Well, here's something. Let me give you a little cheat way that you could do it that's really helpful. Read history. Study some lessons from history of what happened. And you can then say, the year was 1835 and da-da-da-da-da-da. You start talking about that. Now you have to do your research, do your homework, get up, come up to it, but show what they dealt with, a challenge that someone in the past had to overcome, what they did, when they tried it, what happened to them, and they didn't make it, but then they came back and they overcame it. So now you're not the hero, but this person in the past is the hero. And you say, and that's just like what we're facing today, because we've got this, and you start drawing analogies. That's a real good way to get started with it. If you're thinking, well, I can't think of anything happens to me. Well, start with that and just see where it goes. And
then you have your bullet points that you want to emphasize. The next thing you know, you've got a really nice presentation. It's interesting how you weave all that stuff together. And I always found that rehearsal is great, but don't rehearse the speech word for word.
Agreed.
You want to know the essence of it and the main checklist, the bullet points, as it were. And so you can weave your way around those. But if you do it word for word, if you get a third of the way in and you forget what the next word is, you're going to be lost, and you're gonna not succeed the way you want it to.
Yeah, I like the way you say it. You want the bullet points. Those are important. I did, for instance, on my website, I've got a thing about my TEDx talk that I did. And when TEDx, they're very famous. It's got to be short. You don't go for 2 hours. You're going for just a little bit. And so I was aiming for under 12 minutes. And I wanted to do it in the place I did. And what I did is I just remembered the points that I wanted to make, the bullet points. And of course, I didn't use notes. They don't usually do that in TEDx. And so I was using bullet points. And what I did is right here in my study, I walked around the room drawing pictures in my mind of the bullets that I wanted to make. The old loci method of memorization, been around for centuries. And something like that can help you, putting speeches together, for those of you that are watching this, and think about going around a geography area and think, okay, my first point is going to be this. And you see silly, crazy pictures that relate to that and will remind you of it in different places in a familiar position, a familiar site. And that's a good way to deliver a presentation.
Let's move out of the public speaking arena, but before we go, I want to. You mentioned something that you're in the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame. Is that correct?
Yes, I honored that.
When did they do that? I'm just curious.
That was in 2009.
Okay,
and they do only 5 a year, and it's kind of a secret who's going to be there, and it's a real high honor to get that. And so I was very much honored to have that.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
When we first met 10 or 12 or 15 years ago, whatever it was, you were doing a lot of online video, which was fairly new at the time, and you were kind of geeking out on some of the cameras and things. How is what you had back then versus what you use now? How has that changed? I'm just curious. What kind of equipment type of things have you seen evolve?
I've seen a lot of things changing, and I would recommend today, get yourself, first of all, a really good microphone. Matter of fact, Tim, I see you're using the Yeti microphone.
I am.
And so am I right here. I just put mine down. Yeah, peekaboo. You don't see it. It's down there, but this is good. Audio is the most important part of video.
Yeah.
So make sure you got good audio. Matter of fact, this microphone here is from Blue Microphones, as you know. They're the ones that make Yeti. Skipper Weiss himself, one of their co-founders and former COO, gave it to me and told me the story how Steve Jobs came to him and told him, you got to make a microphone and we got to put it in our stores, because they at that time didn't have them in the Apple stores. And he said, you got to charge $150. Skipper looked at it and said, we can't do it, Steve. It's going to cost $250. That's what it's got to be. And Steve said, no, you've got to do it for $150. Well, they went back, did it, and eventually they came up with it. And now the Yeti microphone is the standard in the industry.
I switched to a USB, which is what this is, from the old analog with all the XLR plugs and all that. It took me a while to get there, but I really enjoy this. It's portable. It's very good. And I think this was under $100, this particular. got.
It
So
is now at under $100. So get the good audio microphone first, and you want to make sure you have a very good webcam. You
yeah.
want to make sure it's coming in well. I use a MacBook Pro right now. They've
Yep.
got a very good camera built into it, but I like the external camera because the external camera, I can pick it up and I move it around a little bit. And like, for instance, Tim, I showed you before. Should we show everyone else here what it
Yeah,
looks
sure.
like?
What the
Here
heck?
we go.
Yeah.
See, I can do this. And here's an example. We're actually doing, I'm picking this up, and that is Orlando, Florida right now. A few clouds out there. We're going to schedule for our required by law afternoon rain shower.
It happens. And you're on the water there. That's nice. Yeah.
We are. Yeah, we got the lakes here, so it's good. So, by the way, those of you who are watching it, that's important. If you have the external, you can pick it up and move it around. It creates more excitement rather than boring. That's the worst thing you do.
So you're using a MacBook Pro, but you're using an external camera that's hooked up to the MacBook Pro. So do you go back and forth? I'm just curious. Do you still use the MacBook Pro video camera on occasion?
Occasionally, not that often. Often I will use that when I'm in a hotel room and I wanted to just jump in and jump out. It was a short day trip or somewhere, and I didn't bring the external camera with me.
Right. And I've done Zoom videos, which is easy to do on an iPhone or whatever. Those have worked pretty well. I've seen those work pretty well. So there's really high content video, or high quality video, I should say, on the smartphones these days. They don't even call them smartphones; they're just phones. Everything's in there. Your phone has everything. So, and that has evolved quite a bit over the years. So, do you use that? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah, I use Zoom a lot. Now, as I think you know, Tim, I was the chief enterprise blogger for Skype. They asked me to come on board, and they said, Terry, we've been watching your videos, and nobody's doing this. Can you show us how? I said, hey, for the right price, we can work something out here. And so I came on, and I would use it. I love Skype, great people, great company, but I'm now using Zoom even more. I just like the ability, like you and I right now, we're recording it.
Yeah.
Click one little button. It looks like you've got a friend there that's barking or something.
Yep.
Which is okay. They do that. It's fine.
They do that.
And they like Zoom too. But I find that Zoom is a great little tool because not only can we record it quickly, but also sometimes you want to show, hey, here's a really cool app. Tim, I want to show you this app that does da-da-da-da-da-da. I can take this and I can share the screen and be able to have it right there so you would actually see my screen from here over there.
Right.
Just need it on the same Wi-Fi. But I think that having this is really a good money maker for those that are content leaders and thought leaders. You can create content by interviewing someone like we're doing right now, or create your own PowerPoint or Keynote slideshow and go through the slides, and you still have your picture-in-picture on the screen if you want.
Yeah,
it's a nice little tool all the way around.
And it's so common these days, and I'm glad that it has gotten to that point. I remember when video first came on, or in the late '90s, actually, people were talking about it, and you'd see it on occasion before YouTube, and you'd think, okay, there's not enough bandwidth, but that will change. It certainly has changed. Now we've got, I think I'm connected to 200 megabytes a second bandwidth, and sometimes you think that's not enough, but but it's very high quality, and it's and people use it. So, what are the things you use video for, or online? Is it just one-on-ones? I'm just curious what else you use it for.
Well, I do a lot with one-on-ones. Matter of fact, just today afterwards, I've got a call with a client of mine who is a dentist, and he's got a very large, successful practice up in the Northeast, and I'm coaching him on how to present on video. He does a lot of training and instruction in addition to the dental work that he does. So I'm showing him how to present. He records something, then I come back and go, now this looks good, but don't look over here. You want to look over this way right here, or get a little bit closer to the microphone, those kind of things. So that is good. I also have done a lot of presentations to groups. So that for whatever reason I can't physically be there, I can then talk to the group, involve them as if I were there, and use something like Zoom, and I've used Skype before for it as well. And it gives the ability for them to learn, to experience the magic. Of course, it's big savings in cost getting someone out there, but also you can do it more frequently. Yeah. And that is good, that you can say, okay, it's now the first Tuesday of the month and we all get together for a meeting to learn da-da-da-da. It's a great tool for that.
Yeah, and I belonged to a mastermind group for a while where twice a week they would meet. And sometimes on Zoom you'd have 50 or 60 people joining for the mastermind, and people would kind of chime in and talk and stuff. And that was really convenient. And the fact that you can do that very easily, just pop it up, pull up an app, you're online, there you go. Whether you're connected to Wi-Fi in your home or whether you're out on the road somewhere, because the quality that comes through on 4G these days is not bad either. You know, I just want to touch on this because I read something about this morning. 5G is coming, of course. That's going to change the planet as far as connectivity. It's going to be 100 times faster than what is currently, connectivity is. So that'll take, this thing to the next level. It's just pretty
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just look at what's happening right now. The bandwidth getting better so that it's going to be common to have 100, 200 megabits or higher on a remote when you're out in the field just walking around.
Terry, any last words? How can we find you? What have you got going today other than the rain shower this afternoon?
Yeah, we're supposed to have that this afternoon, a normal thing, and it's cool. It cools it off. It cleans the air. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, but we do a lot more than that too. I help people that are looking at building their business and want to get involved with the technology and use it for entrepreneurs. And the best way to find me is, terrybrock.com. That's for those on audio, Terry, and Brock is spelled the right way, BROCK. So,
is there a wrong way? I didn't know there's another way to spell it.
Yeah, they spell it sometimes a different way, but don't do it that. You want terrybrock.com.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, you're almost over your shyness. Terry, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I'm working on it, Tim. Thanks for your help to help me overcome that. It's great to see you again, my buddy.
Hey, thanks again to Terry. That was a very fun interview. Thanks, Terry, for joining me on the Video Blog podcast today. Really appreciate it. I think that, if he works at it, he'll actually get over that shyness in the not-too-distant future. Today's Trade Show tip of the week comes from the book Trade Shows, Superheroes and Exhibiting Zombies. Speaking of video, there's a chapter or a list in here called 6 Ways to Use Video at Your Next Trade Show. If you want the entire list with all the descriptions and everything, feel free to go find the book. But here's the list. The ways you can use video at your next trade show. Number 1, testimonials. Nothing like a satisfied customer telling potential customers how well your product or service works. The more details, the more believable, but keep it short. Demos. If you're able to demonstrate how your product works inside the booth, that's great. Sometimes it takes video from like the factory floor or something like that. Number 3, guests. If you have a celebrity or other type of guest, you can have that person sit down for a short interview. You can use that video. If you have a guest in the booth, you can shoot a video of them and then share that online. So that's also using video. The boss is your CEO or manager coming by, or the owner. Sit down with them. Can they be counted on to be a good face of the company discussing your product? They're usually good at that, but make sure that if they are, put them in front of a video camera. Number 5, Q&A. If your product makes people curious as to, gosh, how does that work? Then do a Q&A. Frequently asked questions, answer them. And other products. Do other exhibitors have products that can be used in conjunction with your products? Maybe your product is a complementary product to somebody else's booth that's just down the row. So get one of the reps from that company to go to your booth, or you take your camera. Take your camera down to their booth and do a quick little video of them. So get some video showing how that combination might work to benefit potential customers. Then you can share that with the other company, and that'll get twice the bang for the buck by sharing that on social media. Finally, let's end the Trade Show Guy Monday Morning podcast for July 9th with one good thing. This week, the one good thing, I think, is Showtime documentary called The Fourth Estate. Just out this last couple of months, documentary on the New York Times. I've read the Times for years. I read the digital version now. I came from a journalism background. At least in high school, I spent 3 or 4 years in journalism as both a reporter and a photographer. And then, of course, all my years in radio, did a lot of reporting, a lot of news anchoring. So I like the journalism, the reporting, the fourth estate, the press, the media. I'm always curious to see how that works. And, the New York Times, obviously the most high-profile media outlet, I think, in print, and how they're transitioning to digital. But this particular documentary is about 4 hours long, maybe a little bit longer, about an hour per episode. And it starts, I think, the day of Donald Trump's inauguration and all the stuff that came out over the next, let's say, 16 to 17 months, and how they dealt with it, how they reported on it, and how they were in competition with both TV stations and other media, print media like the Washington Post. Fascinating documentaries on Showtime called The Fourth Estate about the New York Times. If you're curious to see how it works behind the scenes as they track that one particular topic, it's quite a documentary. So that's it. Have fun this week. It's good for you, and see you next week. on the Trade Show Guy Monday Morning Coffee.